Welcome to the training on counseling parents with children who are obese. A little introduction about me. I grew up in Iowa and Idaho. I graduated from BYU with a bachelor's in dietetics. I completed the dietetic internship through Utah State, and I'm currently completing the MDA program through Utah State, and this training is part of my master's project. I currently work at Sandy at the WIC clinic there as a dietitian. Some things I enjoy, I like rock climbing, slacklining, playing piano and guitar, just hanging out with friends. Okay, a little bit about how this training is going to go. We're going to start by discussing the causes and consequences of obesity briefly. We'll touch on weight stigma and the effect it has on clients. We'll touch a little bit about the benefits of weight neutral care. And then the majority of our training will be on motivational interviewing. We'll have some practice segments, some video examples, and then we'll kind of wrap up. What are the causes of obesity? So the causes of obesity isn't something we're necessarily going to talk with clients about, but it's something good for us to know. I'm sure you guys know a good portion of this, but just a little review. We'll discuss a little bit about this. I got this graphic from one of my references, which they're all at the bottom of my presentation. So a lot of things that influence obesity are out of our control and out of clients that we talk to out of their control, and so we want to just be aware of that. So we'll go over just a little bit about each one of these. So genetics is something that we inherit, right? We're not able to change that. Pretty self-explanatory. Epigenetics, super interesting. According to the CDC, it's the way our behaviors and environment can actually change and affect how our genes work. So a little bit within our sphere of influence, but a lot of it is the environment, how things happen, so not really something that we can control. Environmental, so that kind of encompasses a lot. We could think of food availability, safety, kind of where you live, how close you are to, like, say, a grocery store or fast food, stuff like that. You could also think of marketing and how a lot of unhealthy foods are a lot more easily accessible. There are so many environmental factors that actually support obesity, and so this is something that we kind of have to work against a little bit. So, and then social cultural, this one down here, this is like cultural foods, cultural traditions surrounding foods. Some of those could support or go against obesity, kind of depends. Also, this includes your socioeconomic status. So how much food do you have to spend on groceries? Do you have transportation? Things like that. A lot of these things are aspects that maybe our clients that we see kind of struggle with, and that they're kind of fighting against as well. And then physiological, kind of how our body works, right? And you can kind of think a lot. It's really hard to lose weight, actually, and that's kind of how our bodies were designed a little bit, is to retain and to store nutrients. And so just something to kind of think about when we're talking to clients about obesity. It's a hard journey. And then, of course, there's behavioral. So the last thing, and really the only thing that's within our sphere of influence. So of course there's a lot more that goes into the causes of obesity, the different factors, but just kind of a brief overview just to kind of keep in mind when we're discussing weight with our clients. What are the consequences of obesity, and why is it important to discuss? So 2 studies that came out in 2020 reported a few different statistics about the prevalence of obesity. One of them stated that 18.5% of US children are obese. They categorize children as anywhere from 2 to 18, so that's quite a bit if you think about it, kind of a little bit scary. So obesity is generally linked to chronic disease. So if you are more obese, you're more likely to develop liver disease, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, things like that. Another statistic in one of those studies is that 67 to 86% of children who are severely obese have at least one risk factor for these chronic diseases. And that's really telling. It shows that even children are being affected by obesity. It's not just an adult problem. And so as we're talking with parents about their children, their family, we kind of want to be aware of that. This isn't, again, something we're necessarily going to be talking with clients about specifically, because I don't know how beneficial it really is, but something just good for us to know that we don't want to avoid the topic, right? And we'll go into how we can kind of talk about that. Another thing to know about the consequences of obesity is the psychological stress that can accompany it, especially in kids. If you think about they're getting ready to go to school, they have different interactions with kids, maybe getting picked on, so we just kind of want to be really sensitive with this whole topic. And of course, like I said, this is why we're here for this training, is to kind of figure out how we can approach this sensitively. So we want to just get more tools to kind of help us with this. This leads us to weight stigma. So what is weight stigma? It's when society devalues people due to their weight or body size. This means society often links inaccurate stereotypes to people who have higher weight. This can be that they're lazy, they lack willpower, they're unmotivated. Of course, all of these are untrue, and this weight stigma can have a really big negative effect on individuals. So of course, psychological stress, we kind of mentioned that previously. So this can make them feel less than, inferior, disrespected, which is of course not great. These kind of feelings can lead to unhealthy eating behaviors, right? Can kind of fuel that oftentimes. Also, more sedentary behaviors. If you don't really feel great, you're not going to go out and do something super active necessarily, right? And then all of this affects physiological factors, right? So if you're not eating great, you're not moving a lot, it kind of also contributes to obesity in the end, right? Gaining maybe a little bit more weight. And so it's just kind of this negative cycle that happens with weight stigma. And so this is something that we want to reverse, but we need to be aware of it first of all, and be aware of how weight stigma affects us individually and us as healthcare workers. So how does weight stigma affect us in healthcare? So if we have these negative effects of weight stigma, if they're kind of already on the defensive, clients can feel disrespected and judged, and that kind of shuts them down, results in poor communication with the client and us, and this reduces the quality of healthcare just overall, right? We don't know where they're coming from. We maybe have assumptions about them. It's not patient-centered. It's just not great overall, right? Kind of starts this negative cycle. And there's also poor treatment adherence because clients, patients, they're not wanting to follow what we talk to them about because it's not individualized, it's not focused on them. So these are all specific to like healthcare and how weight stigma affects us in healthcare. So something to be aware of, kind of taking a look internally, and we want to try and flip the narrative. Weight neutral care. So what exactly is that? I know we've talked about it in different trainings that we've had. A good definition, I believe Nicole kind of gave this definition from the Minnesota Department of Health as well. Prioritizes health and well-being without emphasizing weight to improve diet and health-related behaviors. So instead of focusing so much on weight, we talk about things that are within individuals' sphere of control. This helps clients feel understood and respected. It helps clients feel that they can be healthy at their size, and it elicits more individualized care. We're focusing on the client instead of making assumptions. And then this leads to clients feeling more motivated to make changes, and they actually follow through on those changes. It's more client-centered interventions, right? So weight neutral care is really important. And if you can remember, weight neutral care also means when you discuss weight, using weight neutral terms, right? Like larger or smaller instead of obese or obesity, things like that. Now that we've discussed weight stigma, how weight neutral care is beneficial, how do we do this? How do we provide weight neutral care to our clients? Well, I'm going to talk about how motivational interviewing is a way that we can provide weight neutral care for our clients. What is motivational interviewing? This is a definition that I took from a book called Motivational Interviewing, and it's a little wordy, but we're going to read it and then kind of go through it. So, definition, it's a collaborative, goal-oriented style of communication with particular attention to the language of change. It is designed to strengthen personal motivation for and commitment to a specific goal by eliciting and exploring the person's own reasons for change within an atmosphere of acceptance and compassion. Okay, a lot in there, but point out it's collaborative, right? So it's focused on the client, but we're helping to kind of guide the conversation, to guide the session. It's goal-oriented. So in the end, we want to help make real changes. So we need it in the end to lead to a goal, an action plan. And then it's designed to strengthen personal motivation. So we really want to help clients become motivated, so we want to boost them up by tapping into their motivation. And then we want to do this all within an environment of acceptance and compassion. So motivational interviewing is composed of 4 processes and 4 tools. So we're going to go over all of these. The 4 processes are engage, focus, evoke, and plan. And then the 4 tools are open-ended questions, reflect, affirm, and summarize. So we're going to go over the tools first, and then we'll go into the processes. So the first is open-ended questions. So open-ended questions are questions that are worded in such a way as to produce a meaningful and detailed response from the client, whereas closed-ended questions only produce a yes or a no or single word answers. So we want to help the clients provide us with more information to think through their thoughts, and open-ended questions are a great way to do that. So I know that there are certain things that we have to talk to the clients about, but we can try and use open-ended questions as much as possible. So as a reminder, review, open-ended questions, they start with how, what, why, and tell me. Whereas closed-ended questions can start with do you, have you, are you, will you, is it, can you, things like that. Some other ideas on different questions that you can ask are if any questions. So what concerns, if any, do you have about XYZ? Or hypothetical questions. If you make this change, right, if that's maybe more of a close-ended, but if you make this change, how might it benefit you? Some additional examples of open-ended questions are, tell me what Jimmy eats in a day usually, or why is that important to you? So of course I know we're all very familiar with open-ended questions, but just a little review, they are very important, especially in motivational interviewing. Reflect. So this is the second tool. Definition is just rephrasing what the client stated. Not exactly, right? It's, like it says, rephrasing, highlighting the most important things, and there are a lot of benefits to reflecting. It helps the client feel validated, understood. It also builds trust, and it helps the client work out their own thoughts and feelings by hearing what they told you, hearing it back to themselves. So, one example, a client says, I tried breastfeeding with my first child, but it didn't go very well. I probably won't breastfeed with this baby. CPA says, so you feel discouraged about breastfeeding your new baby because things didn't go as planned when you breastfed your first child. Is that right? Something like that. So reflecting is also a very important tool. Affirm and summarize. The other two tools that we'll discuss. So first, affirm. A good definition is it's a positive statement about someone's character or what they value, and it acknowledges his or her strengths and efforts. There's a lot of benefits that come with affirming. Some of them are listed here. It helps empower the client, helps them maybe feel a little bit motivated, helps them make changes, maybe helps them realize that they're understood, and kind of creates that environment of acceptance, which is really great. So again, yeah, encourages persistence, that motivation factor. Affirming can kind of help give them that little boost that they need. It also can decrease defensiveness. So if you're talking about maybe making a change that they're a little unsure of, they feel defensive maybe, like, oh, I don't want to wean my child from the bottle, I've been trying, it's really hard. You can tell them that something that they're doing good, something that they value, to kind of help affirm and motivate them. So one example, if we're following that weaning from a bottle example, you could say you really care about your children and want to be a good role model for them. There's kind of an example. So affirming is really a great tool to use. So summarizing, kind of like how it sounds, you're reflecting back to the client key bits of information shared. We often use this when the client shares a lot of information all at once. We kind of pick and choose key bits to kind of reflect back to them. There are a lot of benefits to summarizing. One is it helps make sense of their thoughts and feelings because they are hearing it back, and so they're like, okay, maybe I actually want to do this. Another benefit is it helps the client hear ambivalent thoughts. So again, if they're on the fence on whether to change or not, they're unsure, if you reflect back to them what they've been telling you and kind of highlight some things, then it can kind of help them make those changes, and it also helps them know that you're listening and care about it. So if a client's just told you a bunch of information about what their son eats, and they're kind of all over the place, summarizing could be a good tool to kind of synthesize the information and make sure that you're hearing what they're saying. So an example, it sounds like your son eats most fruits and grains, but is a little hesitant when it comes to vegetables and protein foods. So that way you've kind of succinct the information, and you can kind of help them to kind of move on with the conversation and see where to go from there. So these are great tools. So, onto the processes. The first one is engage. So this is the initial contact. You want to make a good first impression, right, with clients. The biggest thing with engaging is you want to make a safe and a welcoming environment. So this is building rapport, right? Giving them a compliment, helping them feel welcomed. A big part of this also is stating our purpose. We're here not just as a checklist. I feel like that's something that we can feel a lot, right? Is when clients are just there to get their benefits, this is just a kind of a checklist, and then they're done, they go on with the rest of their day. But we want to tell them that we're here to help them to complete whatever they want to do as far as nutrition and health goes. And this stating the purpose can really set the mood for the session, can help create like an open to more client-focused session. And so some of the questions that you could ask just right off the bat are, what are you working with your child on? Or what health-related things are you wanting to work on with your child? So ask what they're already doing or what they want to focus on right at the beginning. Can help open up the session really well. Or you can ask, what questions or concerns do you have? And then a big thing, of course, because we're focusing on weight and kind of approaching that topic a little bit, we want to ask permission before discussing growth and weight further. So after we've talked to them about like the measurements, showed them their charts, we want to ask if it's okay that we discuss that a little bit further. And this helps clients feel more in control of that. They're able to give you permission, and I think it just helps overall build that rapport a little bit better. This is an important aspect of sessions, right? Because building relationships really does help make difficult conversations easier. So the saying, people don't really care how much you know unless they know how much you care, right? So we want to help clients feel like we care about them and we want to help them before we kind of talk about those difficult or more tricky conversations. Alright, just a note about body language. Not gonna talk about it too much, but body language is really important, right? It's we want to make sure that we create an open and welcoming environment. So we want to make sure we're making eye contact, that we're smiling, and trying to be more open and engaging. So just a note to make sure you check in on your body language. What message am I sharing with my body language? Alright, so we've come to our first practice segment. So throughout the training, we'll just have a couple of practice segments. I know that practicing isn't really fun, and sometimes we kind of just skip over it. I'm definitely guilty of that, but I really encourage you to kind of pause and work through them. It really helps to kind of cement the things that we're learning through with motivational interviewing. And then after each of the practice segments, there'll be like a little video audio example of the scenario. So first scenario, you're about to see a client. She has a 6-month-old baby named Eliza and a toddler who is 3 years old named Trevor. She seems very tired and not really happy to be there. So I want you to write an open-ended question. You could ask to kind of engage her, and then how would you state your purpose? So take a second to just kind of work through that, and then we'll go to the audio video example. Aw, what an adorable baby. How is your son enjoying having a little sister?
Aw, thank you. He loves her, but wishes she could play with him. He started trying to feed her foods already.
Oh, it sounds like he really enjoys being around her and is excited for when she grows up. He's starting to become a good helper too, it sounds like.
Yeah, he is.
Well, thank you for coming in today. My name is Brianna. I am one of the dietitians here. Today I want to discuss how your son is doing. We can discuss what health and nutrition behaviors are going well and what you would like to focus on. How do you feel about that? Alright, the next process that we are going to talk about is focus. So focusing is just like it sounds. It's helping focus the conversation on a topic and guiding them through the discussion. So we want this to be client-led as much as possible, but it is a collaborative approach. We want to help guide the conversation. So tools to use, open-ended questions, of course. We want to be curious and not judgmental. And then we want to ask any concerns that the parent or the doctor has. So a big part of focusing in this aspect is approaching the topic of weight, right? We want to kind of dive into this topic a little bit, and it can be tricky to kind of start the conversation about it. So a great tactic to start out with is ask permission before discussing weight. We mentioned that before when we were talking about engaging. So show them the chart, their measurements, and then ask, is that okay if we discuss your child's weight a little bit more? You can also ask what terms they prefer to use when talking about weight. So this can be a really positive thing. It could be a little bit, we don't want to make it awkward or draw unneeded attention to it, so use that at your discretion, what you think is good. We also want to focus on behaviors and not their BMI or weight. So, of course, we're going to discuss those numbers, but we want to lead the conversation more towards behaviors and things that are more within their sphere of control. And then when you're looking at their growth trends and chart, look at changes from the normal. And if there have been any changes or abnormal changes, maybe point those out and talk about them, what kind of happened, etc. And then overall, good thing to do is just to listen and assess before providing education. We want to make sure that they feel understood and accepted before we jump in and start spewing information and ideas that we have. So, some good topics to kind of think about when approaching the topic of weight. Alright, so second practice segment, we're going to continue from the previous scenario. So you're still talking with this mom, and you just, from the measurements taken today, you can see that the 3-year-old toddler, Trevor, had a big jump in his weight, but he didn't really gain a whole lot of height. So, and his BMI is over the 95th percentile. So I want you to think about how you would ask permission to discuss his weight, and how would you discuss his weight with his mother when you're showing the growth chart. So think about weight neutral phrases. In previous trainings we've talked about using the terms larger or smaller instead of like obese, and so we want to make sure we use those sensitive terms. So kind of jot down a few things. How would you discuss this with this client? And then we'll go over the audio example afterwards. So today we took Trevor's weight and height. Would you be comfortable discussing the measurements we took?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Great. So Trevor went through a pretty big growth spurt since we last measured him. His weight is a little larger than most of the kids his age. He increased more in weight than he grew in height as well. This makes his BMI a little larger. This just means that he has a larger weight than usual for his height. How do you feel about Trevor's size?
Well, I guess I know he is a bit larger than most of the kids his age, so it does make me a bit concerned. But, he's just a kid, so I figured that it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you have seen that he's gained a little bit more weight lately, and that has made you a bit concerned. You feel that this may be a problem and want what's best for him. What has your doctor said about his growth?
Yeah, at the last appointment, his doctor said he is bigger and that could be unhealthy. I mean, I definitely want to help him be healthy, but I don't want him to worry about his weight.
I think that is wise not to worry too much about his weight. Instead of focusing on his weight, let's focus on healthy behaviors. Would you be okay if we continued by discussing Trevor's physical activity and eating habits? Okay, so the third process is evoke. This is inspiring motivation by helping clients identify their reasons for change. So we want to encourage people to change, and in order to change, they need a reason to, right? Some sort of motivation. And even if it's super small, we want to watch out for that. So in the previous example, the client said that she wants her child to be healthy, and she also thought that having a larger weight might be unhealthy. Kind of said a few of those phrases. So these are some of those signs that she has a desire or a reason to change. Some tips to watch out for: change talk. We call it change talk, right? They're exhibiting maybe some reasons to change or a desire to change. You can use the darn cat as a tool, right, to remember these, but desire to change. So if they show some sort of desire, right, like she wants her child to be healthy, if she has abilities to change, if she feels like she can change, or a reason to change. Maybe there's a certain need that she has to change. She needs to do this because of XYZ. If they're showing commitments, activation, taking steps. So these are all kind of to help us watch out for any signs that they're wanting to change, they have this motivation. And so we really use open-ended questions to evoke change talk. Now, at least I do. I have a tendency to skip this step. So we go from assessing and asking questions, seeing how they're doing, to then providing education and tools on things that I think they should change. So we really don't want to skip this step. This is how we kind of guide the conversation and help clients want to make changes. So, a note about stages of change. I'm sure a lot of you or all of you have heard about stages of change, and we really want to meet clients where they are. So not everyone is ready to make steps to change, right? And so we don't want to force this. This isn't necessarily going to work for everyone, so meet clients where they are. Oftentimes, clients are in the pre-contemplation or contemplation stage where they're like, maybe there's a reason to change, but I'm really comfortable where I'm at. I don't necessarily know if I want to change. So a couple of questions or statements you can kind of approach them with. So for the pre-contemplation, you could say something like, I hear you saying that you're not ready to change right now. Could you tell me what leads you to feel this way? Maybe just kind of dive into how they feel about that, what their kind of thought process is. Or you could say, I believe that your, put in the health behavior, might cause some health risks. Would you be willing to hear or read some information about the health aspect of this behavior? So this is just maybe providing some education, but we're asking permission to do so. The contemplation, you could say something like, I'm hearing that you're thinking about making this change, but you're not really ready to start right now. It's up to you when to start making these changes. We're putting it into their court, right? You can decide when to make these changes if you're ready to make these changes, right? We're just here to help you. You could also follow that up with, what are the benefits of making this behavior change? Or what are the drawbacks of making this behavior change? So maybe just kind of digging in a little bit deeper to see, maybe are there some benefits to changing, or what are some barriers that you may be experiencing? So meet clients where they are, but there are ways and avenues that we can help them to take little baby steps further. Evoking questions. So these are some ideas on how to help evoke motivation, right? To kind of dive a little deeper. So we really want to hear their ambivalence, right? Ambivalence, their like indecisiveness, not sure if they want to change, right? We're trying to pick up on that change talk. And overall, we just want to know what their goal is, right? That's a good way to kind of start. Like, what's your goal? How do you want to help your child, right? That's kind of how we started the session. So we want to help kind of pinpoint that and then use follow-up questions to help evoke motivation. So some ideas on how to do this. Reflect both sides of the issue. So if you kind of hear that there might be some reasons that they want to change, but they're not really sure or they're more comfortable, kind of reflect both of that back to them. So one example, you know that bottle weaning is important for speech development and dental care, but you are unsure of how to get him off of a bottle. So a little example there. Another example is highlight the change talk. So if you notice that they say something specific like, oh, I have this maybe little tiny desire to change, highlight it and reflect it back to them. So you know that it might be hard at first, but it will probably become easier over time. Other questions that can really help evoke motivation. What might make it hard for you to make this change? What do you like about your current way of doing things? How might this change be beneficial? How would your life be different after this change? So there are lots, and maybe you guys have even better ones, but we really want to help evoke motivation even by asking 1 or 2 questions. It doesn't have to take super long, but not skipping this step is really important to help provide patient-centered treatment and care. All right, our next practice segment. So again, we're going to continue with the same scenarios before. You're talking with Trevor's mom about his eating and physical activity habits, and this is kind of what you learn. So you learn that she works from home and often gives Trevor a bottle with milk in it to keep him from fussing. He also eats snacky foods while watching TV, and dinners are often consist of fast food and frozen meals. So I've given you kind of some information, and I want you to write a summarizing statement, an affirmation, and an open-ended evoking question based on this information. So I've given you a couple different maybe things you could kind of run with, so pick what you like, and then for the video or audio examples, we have 2 different scenarios, 2 different ways you could kind of take it. So I'll give you a second to kind of write down that information, think through the scenario. So it sounds like you're very busy with work during the day, and you want to make sure Trevor is cared for, but you find it hard to keep him entertained while working and also caring for Eliza.
Yeah, and when Trevor is fussy, it's so easy to just give him a bottle of milk. It'll keep him quiet and it helps him relax. I guess it's not the best thing because he's getting ready to go to preschool soon.
Yeah, so you find that giving Trevor a bottle of milk will comfort him so you can complete other important tasks, but you realize that it might be beneficial for Trevor to stop using a bottle. What would be some benefits to not giving him a bottle of milk anymore?
Well, it would help him get ready for preschool and kindergarten eventually. I've heard that bottles also aren't very good for the teeth, but it's just so hard because he'll just cry and scream without it.
Yeah, it sounds like you really care about helping Trevor be healthy and prepared for school. You realize that not giving him a bottle may help prepare him for school and help his health as well. It sounds like you're very busy during the day and mealtimes are often rushed because of this.
Yeah, it's hard to find time to make food. I know that making meals would help us be healthier, but fast food or frozen meals are just easiest right now.
Yeah, it sounds like you really want to provide healthy foods for your family, but it can be hard to find time to make a meal. Tell me a little bit more about why having a home-cooked family meal would be beneficial for your family.
Well, when I make food, it's healthier than getting McDonald's. I often include vegetables too, which Trevor would benefit from, and it is nice to slow down a little bit by eating a meal together.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Having a family meal together has a lot of benefits. It sounds like you know why it's important to have a family meal. Would you be open to discussing how we could make this a part of your routine? Okay, so we've come to the last process, which is plan. So planning is really putting things into action, right? Helping the client to set up a plan on how they're going to make this change. And so a big part of this is overcoming barriers, right? We're trying to identify what barriers they have and help provide a solution or create a solution with the client. So with this, we want to ask permission before educating or sharing ideas. This, again, makes it client focused and centered. And then oftentimes, as I tried to illustrate in the practice segment previously, there are lots of different ways of things that you could focus on and educate on. But hopefully throughout this whole process, the whole session, it's focused on what they want to do, and so you're only focusing on 1 to 2 main points. We don't want to overwhelm them, right? Which can be easy to do sometimes. Another thing that can be helpful is to try and include the whole family, right? So we want to make sure that the whole family is a part of this change, and this can help make it more easy to implement. And then we also want to help the client set an actual goal. And I know that not all people are really wanting to set goals, and so this could be more of a focus point, right? Something that they're trying to do, but we do want to make it a little bit more specific, right? And so if a client's like, I don't really know what goal to set, I don't really have anything, but you kind of spent all this time chatting about something specific, maybe be like, well, it sounds like from what we've talked about, you kind of want to focus on this, right? Try and I want to really help us to try and set something specific for them to work on, because this will help the clients actually set something into action, right? Actually change. And then we want it to be SMART, right? Set SMART goals. So make sure they're specific, something easy, measurable, right? Attainable, realistic, time sensitive, all those good things. So that's kind of the plan. We don't have another practice segment. You're welcome. We just have two different like video examples, audio examples, and then we'll wrap up. Would it be okay with you if I shared some information about bottle weaning for toddlers?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Thanks. So you are correct. Using a bottle to offer liquids like milk can lead to cavities. Sometimes when kids drink many bottles of milk, they're too full to eat during meal times as well. And because of this, they miss out on all the needed nutrients. I do have some suggestions we could look at to help you wean Trevor from using bottles. Is that okay if we look at this handout?
Yeah, that would actually be super helpful.
So, based on what we've discussed about bottle weaning, what would you like to start implementing with Trevor?
I think that distracting him may be a good idea. I could encourage him to do an activity or give him a snack when he asks for a bottle.
I think that's a great idea. Every time he asks for a bottle, offer a snack or to do an activity he enjoys. You already discussed why having family meals is important. They are an opportunity to provide a few healthier food options for your family. Everyone eating together can encourage healthier eating from toddlers as well. They see you eating and may want to try a bite as well. How would you be able to incorporate a family meal time in your family's routine?
Well, there are a few times during the week that we are less busy. I could try and make time to eat as a family then. I just don't know if I would have time to make a meal, though.
That sounds great. Would you be open to a few suggestions?
Sure.
If making an entire meal seems too challenging, you could start smaller. If you're having, say, like a frozen pizza for dinner, maybe add a salad and some fruit as side dishes. Having a healthy family meal can be pretty simple.
That's true.
Based on what we've discussed so far, what would you like to focus on?
Well, I can have 1 to 2 family meals a week, and I can try to make sure I serve vegetables at those meals.
That sounds like a great goal. Alright, hope you enjoyed those examples, audio, video examples. Here are just some questions to help with goal setting. So, from what we've discussed today, what would you like to focus on implementing in your family? Or based on what you've told me, it sounds like you would like to start XYZ. So hopefully that kind of helps to set goals with the client at the end of the session. Alright, so education focus points. So because we are talking about children who are obese, there are certain things we want to educate on, right? None of these are new to you guys, but just to kind of sum up, there are certain things that we kind of want to pinpoint and help families to either avoid or implement more. So limiting sugary beverages like milk, juice, and soda, right? Especially in bottles. Bottles makes it a little easier to access and isn't great for teeth and development and stuff. Limiting fast food or frozen meals. There are ways to kind of help little by little limit those, right? And then of course eat more fruits and vegetables, whole grains, or we can always improve on that, right? And then avoiding eating while watching like TV or tablets. We want to help kids to regulate their hunger and fullness cues, right? And oftentimes overeating is really easy if they're watching a screen or a show, so something to be aware of. And then family meals are really beneficial, right? It's a time to kind of help teach kids how to sit down and eat and hopefully learn, their hunger and fullness cues, maybe introduce some new foods like a new vegetable, right? There's lots of benefits for family meals, as you guys know. And then, of course, regular physical activity, maybe brainstorming some ideas on how to stay active in the winter, right? That can be hard. So obviously there's tons of education points, but I wanted to focus on the motivational interviewing aspect and a little bit less on the education points. But this kind of starts the ball rolling on some of that. All right, you guys are doing great. I know you guys are. Just want to encourage you to try to implement some of the things that we talked about, right? We talked about motivational interviewing a lot and trying to use those 4 tools, right? Open-ended questions, affirming, summarizing, reflecting, all of those to help motivate clients and focus on them and what they want to change. And so it really should be client focused, and these are some tools to kind of help us to do that just a little bit more as we're talking about weight and making those changes with the clients. So I encourage you to practice these techniques, especially when you're counseling parents who have obese children. This is the post-training evaluation, so please take this. It's just a couple of questions, so pretty short. This training is for my project for my master's program, and this will help me kind of with that. So thank you again for taking this, but please just take a few minutes to take this. It's completely anonymous. Alright, this quiz is for WIC participants, so after you have sessions with a parent who has obese children, please ask them to take this quiz. It's just 2 questions. It's all anonymous. You can tell them that you're not going to see the answers. This is just to help us to improve. So please ask them to take this. I'm going to give you guys like 3 weeks to kind of do this, so we want to try and get as many answers as we can. This is in English, Spanish, and Arabic, so if it's easier for them, they can choose which language to pick once they do this. And then I will be providing you with like a handout with this so you can print off and have the clients scan it at the end of the appointment. So here are my resources if you are interested. You can feel free to check them out if you'd like. And thank you so much for listening to this training. Feel free to email me with any questions you may have. And you will be able to access these slides, of course. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.